Right, Phil Egan is with us. Phil, good morning to you. How are you?
How are you doing, lads?
We were supposed to talk to Jonathan Wilson this morning, but unfortunately the gremlins in the system have prevented us from doing so, about Pep getting in his own way. Shane makes the rightful point. Well, Liverpool, they get some credit for this, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think both sides of the argument. Liverpool, something Jurgen Klopp has talked about it in the last few weeks about the lack of being compact and space in midfield. So they were very compact on Sunday, and obviously I was surprised to see Phil Foden so far back in, basically playing as a wing back. When you consider that, when you saw James Milner starting at right back, and you think of what Phil Foden did to him last season, and James Milner was very lucky not to get sent off in this fixture last season, and just felt that City didn't get at him enough. Now, what I would say is, because Liverpool were a bit more compact, well, a lot more compact, Milner was protected. This is what, if Trent Alexander-Arnold had been playing on Sunday, he would have got that protection. So he wouldn't have been as exposed. Now, that's not to say that Trent Alexander-Arnold hasn't been struggling this season. He has. But Liverpool were far more compact. It is easier to be like that against Manchester City. It's more acceptable. The next step is going to be, how do they approach the West Ham game on Wednesday night, where West Ham are quite happy to sit back against
Can you
Liverpool.
not do a bit of both? Like,
absolutely, I think you can, yeah, because Liverpool have players that can play in the break. I mean, that's where Mo Salah's goal comes from. You look at the chances that Núñez created when he came on. Jota had chances as well. These were chances created on the break. Liverpool, that's why I get, like, Jurgen Klopp obviously has a way of playing and it has served him so well, but it surprised me that it's taken up until now to kind of just readjust, and maybe it was Manchester City was what he needed to reset things a little bit, and we're going to find out tomorrow night if it is a turning point in the season for them.
Well, Joe Gomez looked like prime Paolo Maldini. Yeah. All of a sudden, like, he's getting so much slack, and yet he was brilliant.
Yeah, well, he struggled against Napoli. Now, what's transpired since? Everyone that's gone to Naples has struggled this season.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
And they absolutely ripped Ajax apart. They're top of Serie A, and when they play at home, they are lethal at the moment. But yeah, he had a really tough night. I was encouraged by his performance at Ibrox. I even thought when he came on against Arsenal that one thing that happened was there was a 1-2 played around him, but he got back in position and got a block in, whereas we had seen earlier in the game or earlier in the season, Trent Alexander-Arnold sometimes gets played around and doesn't track. As soon as the ball's gone by him, he's kind of thinking, it's done. Whereas, you still have to track back. Even if you're taken out of it, you can still get in and make a block somewhere. But yeah, we talked about this last Friday, Ger, on the kickoff, where I said, I kind of likened this to United playing Liverpool, where United were already felt like at rock bottom under Ten Hag, and certain games can actually be good now if you come out on the right side of it.
Yeah.
And I always felt that City were favourites going to Anfield on Sunday, but if Liverpool scored first, which they don't do very often these days, but if they did, then there's every chance that they could win the game.
How did they protect Milner? How did they form that block? Was it personnel? Was it instruction? Was it that Jota and Harvey Elliott have the energy to get back and to be defensive when they're not in possession? Was it that Fabinho played well for 70 minutes?
Yeah. Well, if you look at it as well, it was 4-4-2. We didn't know if they'd go 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, what 4-4-2 they'd play. But if you look at it, and I know I had this conversation with Stephen Doyle, who was on commentary for us on Sunday, and he said it was quite clear from early on that Liverpool played a diamond formation where Fabinho dropped, and obviously Thiago and Elliott were on either side of him, and then Firmino played at the top of the diamond, and then that allowed Jota and Salah to be more central. Obviously, we had talked about Salah being isolated at times out wide and earlier in the season, and sometimes Harvey Elliott was drifting into his space in certain games. And one criticism of Harvey Elliott has been maybe the defensive side of things, but he was on it. And I think it's hard to know where his Liverpool career will end, like, what level he'll get to, because when you're a young player, we know how much talent, and if Jurgen Klopp is starting as a teenager, you've got something about you. But one thing he has shown is he has an unbelievable appetite to learn and to work hard. And I mean, the talk is that him and Pep Lijnders have been working on that defensive side of things of what his role is when he doesn't have the ball. So I thought he was very good on that. Yeah, I think it helped. Fabinho did have a very good game, whereas Fabinho, unfortunately, has suffered in that when there is so much space in midfield, he is not the kind of player that has all the energy to cover every end. He's just meant to pick up, and he senses danger, and that's what he did the other day. And I think Liverpool just got their tactics spot on, and again, I think Pep overthought it.
So it was a diamond, and Jota and Salah were essentially free to go wherever they want, with Salah, the number 9, really.
Yeah, and obviously Jota, because Jota's like, a few things didn't stick with him up front, but defensively he was excellent. And that probably contributed to him getting the injury at the end, where he had run himself into the ground. So you would imagine if he wants to stick with that system, Núñez is an able replacement. And look, Núñez, when he came on, lacked composure.
I mean, the most obvious pass in world football history to play Salah in, and he just decides to shoot. But he was lively.
Yeah, and that's the encouraging thing, is he doesn't shy away from it. If he makes a mistake, a few minutes later he put the ball in for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Maybe there was another option with that one as well. But
is there a chance that James Milner gets picked ahead of Alexander-Arnold for these games for a while?
Well, I don't think so. I think if Alexander-Arnold is fit for tomorrow night, he'll play. And if he gets that same kind of protection and Liverpool are as compact as they were on Sunday, then it won't be as big an issue for him. He won't be as exposed.
Milner's less likely to run past the right-footed player's right foot.
Yeah.
And take everybody out.
Yeah, I know you're referring to the Saka goal against Arsenal.
Yeah.
It was dreadful. I mean, you can't.
And the thing
defend.
is, it wasn't a one-off, or it doesn't feel like it's a one-off. It's that defensive instinct is something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose with Trent Alexander-Arnold he doesn't see himself as a defender. He never has. But he was basically said, you're going to play in this role, but you're going to be a creator in this role, which works when you have the ball and you're on top of your game.
And on balance, the gazillion assists is better than the goals that you can see.
Exactly.
But then in those very, very big games where actually, it's going to be 50-50.
Yeah.
Is there any case to be made for not having him start the games even, and have him come off and have him bring some dynamism to the second half?
Well, some people say, why not just put him into midfield? I don't know if he's good enough for a midfield role, but he could actually play in a midfield if it was a diamond. The problem is, when you play in midfield and it's so crowded, you have to be sharp and technically excellent. Technically, he's a good footballer, but there's a difference where I'm talking about his technical excellence is the way he strikes a ball and delivers a ball. Yeah. But I'm talking with your back to goal, you've got two players coming in behind you.
Can you pick the pass in between the two of them?
Can you take a touch and get another one away? Like players like Thiago, they could control the ball in a phone box, and they've no problem with that. Guardiola using Anfield as not an excuse, but he pointed out his record, and it had been pointed out at Anfield. That's 2 draws and 5 defeats when fans have been there at Anfield. It does have an impact, the Anfield atmosphere. But that's what Klopp has created. Yeah. Where one thing you can count on, even when Liverpool are struggling, is the crowd are going to be there for them. And this is why I felt with Manchester City, this will definitely get the crowd up for it. If you can't get up for the champions arriving in your backyard on a Sunday afternoon in front of the TV cameras, then you may forget about it. So, and the longer the game went on, if City had scored early, who knows, then it deflates the atmosphere. But the longer the game went on and tackles were flying, it was a little bit similar to last season where it was 0-0 at half time. And then it just sparked into life in the second half. But the difference I felt with Sunday is Liverpool were very good. I'm not saying they weren't good in the games last season, but I felt last season at Anfield, Liverpool needed the halftime whistle. And when they got it, then they obviously, Salah scored that amazing goal. Last season at the Etihad, I thought Liverpool did very well to get a 2-2 draw. They showed their character, but City were the better team. Whereas I thought on Sunday, Liverpool were excellent. And certainly.
So you do think they're back?
I don't know. Well,
or at least they're going to be capable of these big performances over the course of the season, and so therefore that should be probably enough to get them back into the top 4.
Yeah,
and but they're live contenders in the Champions League.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that performance though was based on intensity. So
Yeah.
can they get back to that level tomorrow night? Then they've an early game on Saturday against Nottingham Forest, which Liverpool have played a few early games this season and they've been dreadful. It's like they just haven't woken up.
But Forest will concede chances. That's the thing about Forest.
Well,
Absolutely,
I
but-
mean, and they've a game in hand as well, and all of a sudden the table looks great when you start beating Man City. You know, win
Look,
those
if,
two games,
if
and all of a sudden
Liverpool
it's
beat West Ham and
transformative.
Nottingham Forest, then what a 6 days that'll have been.
Yeah.
And they,
What's the target now? What's the league? What's the realistic league target for Liverpool?
I think they have to just make sure they finish top 4, and like Ger said, have a good run in the Champions League. And they need a point away to Ajax in their next game to qualify for the last 16. If they don't get the result there, then they've Napoli in their final game. Napoli are already through, but you wouldn't want to have to get something. But a draw would probably be, yeah. So you'd fancy them to get a draw away to Ajax, but then like the World Cup obviously is going to make things very interesting. And what happens in the second half of the season? What kind of condition do your players come back?
Oh, Salah comes back in great condition.
Mo Salah comes back in great condition. Looks like Jota ain't going to the World Cup. Like the players that are going to be there, Van Dijk is going to be there, but he's a centre half.
Yeah.
So it's not as if he's going to be, having to cover serious ground.
So long as he doesn't get injured. Yeah.
So long as he doesn't get injured. What England players are going? Is Trent Alexander-Arnold going to go?
He might because of the injuries.
Reece James, has Joe Gomez all of a sudden entered the conversation?
Well, I see he's a shoe-in now, according to one of the papers. I'm like,
Yeah.
Football comes
well,
at you
that might
fast.
not be the worst thing for Joe Gomez to go to a World Cup and come back with a bit of confidence and, an established England starter.
Just don't take a penalty, whatever you do.
Well, Martin Keown was in the papers today, one of his columns, and he was kind of talking about how a few years ago he actually said Gomez and Van Dijk is going to be the next great Premier League partnership. Now, it hasn't materialised for a number of reasons, but
Well, I thought Gomez was horrific against Napoli. Like, I thought that was
Yeah.
a kind of career-defining
It was awful.
shit show. Like,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And there was a few games where he's just a lapse in concentration, but that comes with confidence. Like, you would imagine the performance on Sunday will give him confidence.
Yeah.
And then he's back in. But, what team did West Ham go with? Scamacca started on Sunday, but, an old physical battle with Michail Antonio, it could be the kind of game that Gomez doesn't need. But I just think that it's far too early. I felt it was far too early to say Liverpool were a busted flush. I also feel it's far too early to say they're back. As
Yeah,
well.
I think that's fair enough. But it does mean, because their results have been so bad in the early part of the season, that every game is going to be a bit of a knife edge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is great. Like,
Yeah,
every
jeopardy.
game is meaningful from this point forward.
There's a lot of clubs in that situation now. I mean, you look at some of the fixtures over the next few days, that some managers are looking over their shoulders, and like a bad result, and you could see a few P45s handed out.
Even if he isn't interested, I can't even remember that Pochettino line now. Pochettino, if he shows any, even if he unexpectedly shows any interest, Villa will wait for him. Is this like, they're swiping right on all the wrong people?
Pochettino is available, and if he wants it, he'd be a great appointment for Villa, you would imagine. But I said it goes back to the fixtures. So you're looking at Villa are playing Fulham on Thursday. Then they've Brentford at the weekend.
Yeah.
So they are two winnable games, but they're also
That's the problem.
The kind of games that if Gerrard was to lose both, then
Screwed.
I don't think he survives.
Yeah.
I think the fact that a very well sourced story by 3 journalists from the Telegraph has details about the owner's investments in Las Vegas is in the papers,
Yeah.
and they're talking about successors, like that. Somebody somewhere is talking. It's a very well sourced story,
Yeah.
and all of the most important people at Aston Villa are mentioned in the story, and they all have doubts about Steven Gerrard.
Yeah.
And they're pointing out that Steven Gerrard's situation is exactly the same, pretty much, as the situation when the previous manager got sacked. And he had a track record of bringing the club up
Yeah.
and keeping them in the Premier League. Steven Gerrard has no track record.
No.
They owe him nothing. They gave him an opportunity, and he hasn't been good enough.
Yeah, no, I don't think he has been good enough. And
He'll be gone if he doesn't get
I mean,
4 points from those 2 games.
7 goals this season. And the performance was a lot better on Sunday. And
Yeah.
if Kepa doesn't pull off a few saves, we could be having a different conversation. But that's just not the way football works. And
No, so it's
Lads,
on a knife edge for him as well.
Is Pochettino being linked to Villa, not Jim McGuinness being linked with the Waterford football job? Like, this is Like,
Well,
it's so far beyond the realms of
Villa
possibility
can
that it's
pay
like,
him the same as any other club in world football can pay him. They have
Yeah,
the same-
financially, I guess,
they're-
yeah.
So it's just whether or not they can say we have 150 million this season, we have 100 million the following season. You're going to have full control over that, and we're going to give you the 10 to 12 million that you'll get if you're going to manage a super club. But here's your chance to bring us to European football, and we'll give you a release clause when a team in the Champions League from these leagues come. You can take that job. Do you know, like
No, I get what Shane is saying, that this is a guy
It's
that's
beneath him.
always been linked to
big jobs.
some big jobs. He's obviously been the manager of PSG, but
you got to make a comeback somewhere. You know,
yeah, look, it would be a similar. It would kind of fall between Southampton and Spurs, where it's better than Southampton, but it's not as good as Spurs. Now, I'm not saying like Villa are a huge club, but they want to get to where he brought Spurs,
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
or close to it anyway. But
and he feels he's already done that work, and so he should be getting a Champions League job. But they don't come around. The good ones, where you're not going to get sacked in 10 months, don't
Yeah.
come around all the time. So
He just has to not. Matthew McConaughey, remember, had that rom-com phase, and then he stopped answering the phone for like 5 or 6 years before he got the Dallas Buyers Club jobs. Poch just needs to not answer the phone to Villa and these teams, and eventually he's going to get the big calls.
From
Just
who,
leave
though?
it for a while.
from who? Man United? That
Well,
didn't happen.
Yeah, well,
From Arsenal, he can't do that job.
No.
The Spurs job maybe might come around again. But
yeah,
like,
well, I mean, look, we know Conte isn't long term.
the Chelsea job he's not going to get.
No,
So none of those England jobs. Could he take the Atletico
England job.
job?
yeah, the England job. Yeah,
Who knows?
Right.
you never know.
No, I know. I
England are going to get an England manager next time, an English manager. But I don't think they're going to go for another outsider.
no, and if you're looking at it now, like Eddie Howe hasn't done himself any harm with how he's dealing with Newcastle, but you'd imagine he probably is happy enough to stay at Newcastle.
Well, he may as well, you know. And the money's probably better there than it is at England.
I'd
Yeah.
say it's decent enough. Yeah.
And Potter the same. Like Potter's starting out and it's
Yeah.
going well, so you may as well ride that as long as you can.
I wonder, with the England job, will a certain Brendan Rodgers be available after the World Cup? Because he's in that conversation of managers that just look like they're one bad result away.
Yeah, and he needs a fresh start somewhere.
Yeah.
Because he's done.
And he would, like,
people
they
don't
would-
like Brendan Rodgers, but he's done a great job. You know.
Yeah.
He won a trophy. He got them to within a hair's breadth of qualifying for the Champions League twice.
Yeah.
That's a remarkable job.
Yeah, but he's not doing a good job now.
He's not.
And I know people say he's not getting the players and he's having to sell his best players, but there is no way with the quality he has in that squad that they should be anywhere near where they are.
Yeah, maybe that England squad need a bit of character as well.
He couldn't manage that.
Personality.
And personality, he'd certainly bring both.
I know
both.
he's from Northern Ireland, and I get what you were saying about
Outside managers.
but like
He's come through their system.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's all fair. All right, Phil, good stuff. Thanks a million.